Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer and sex offender whose killing spree occurred in greater Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, in the state of California. From April 1984 to August 1985, Ramirez murdered at least 14 people during various break-ins, with his crimes usually taking place in the afternoon, leading to him being dubbed the Night Stalker, the Walk-In Killer, and the Valley Intruder. He was sentenced to death in 1989 and died while awaiting execution in 2013. Why do people do what they do, man? Why do they do it? Ramirez's crimes were heavily influenced by a troubled childhood. Frequently abused by his father, he developed brain damage and started abusing drugs at an age of 10. He began developing macabre interests in his early and mid-teens from his older cousin, a Vietnam War veteran with schizophrenia and PTSD, who extensively bragged about his war crimes he had committed, who killed his wife in front of him when he was 15. Yo, this guy's an animal. Why are you letting him anywhere near a fucking kid? Ramirez learned military skills from him that he would later employ during his killing spree. He also cultivated a strong interest in Satanism and the occult. Yo, this guy's story is gonna be fucking savage. He's delving into that shit, and he's definitely certified fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, bro. By the time he had left his home in Texas and moved to California at an age of 22, Ramirez began to frequently use cocaine. He would often commit burglaries to support his drug addiction, many of which were later frequently accompanied by murders, attempted R-words, and battery. Oh my god. I just don't say that word because I think YouTube flags it. The murder spree terrorized the residents of greater Los Angeles and later the San Francisco Bay Area over the course of 14 months. However, his first known murder occurred as early as April 1984. This crime was not connected to Ramirez, nor was it known to be his doing until 2009. Jesus Christ. What the hell are they doing the whole time? Ramirez used a wide variety of weapons, including handguns, various types of knives, a machete, a tire iron, and a claw hammer. He punched, pistol whipped, and strangled many of his victims, both with his hands and, in one instance, a ligature? What is that? Strangulation is compression of the neck that may... No, so just like a choke. Stomped at least one victim to death in her sleep and tortured another by shocking her with live electrical cord. Ramirez also frequently enjoyed degrading and humiliating his victims, especially those who survived his attacks and whom he explicitly decided not to kill. He's fucking Art the Clown. It sounds so crazy that someone's running around able to do this many times. It sounds fake. You wouldn't think it'd be fucking real. It's that level of... All I'm thinking of is Art the Clown when he's brutalizing the chick and he's putting salt in the back of her wounds and shit. That's what he sounds like. Shocking another with a live electrical cord. That's... How the fuck are you running around shocking people? In 1989, Ramirez was convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The judge who upheld his 19 death sentences remarked that his deeds exhibited cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond any human understanding. Ramirez never expressed any remorse for his crimes. He died on June 7, 2013 of complications from B-cell lymphoma while awaiting execution on California death row. No shit, it's beyond any human understanding level of viciousness. It seems like it's so... That level of evil is just so demonic. Like, he said he was looking into the occult and all that type of shit. Like, you probably really do harness some devil energy. Ricardo was born in El Paso, Texas on February 29, 1960, to Mexican immigrants Mercedes Munoz, if that's how you say that, and Julian Tapia Ramirez, the youngest of their 5 children. He was the youngest. His father, a railway laborer, was an alcoholic who was prone to fits of anger that often resulted in physical abuse towards his wife and children. Ramirez was brought up a Catholic and began smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol at an age of 10. Starting young, Mike Tyson said he was doing all that type of shit when he was real young too. Psychiatrist Michael Stone describes Ramirez as a made psychopath as opposed to a born psychopath. He says that Ramirez's schizoid personality disorder contributed to his indifference to the suffering of his victims and his untreatability. Stone also stated that Ramirez was knocked unconscious and almost died on multiple occasions before he was 6 years old, and as a result later developed temporal lobe epilepsy and hypersexuality. At age 12, Ramirez was taken under the wing of his older cousin, Miguel Angel Mike Valles, June 14th. Why is it giving me his date? Alright, cool. A soldier in the U.S. Army who himself had already become a serial killer and R-word during his service in the Vietnam War. Oh, that was the dude they were talking about fucking earlier. Mike often boasted of committing gruesome war crimes in Vietnam and shared Polaroid photos with Ramirez showing Vietnamese women whom he had R-worded, murdered, and dismembered or decapitated. What the fuck? It is alleged that many of these photos depicted women being tied to trees or wooden posts before and after they were sexually assaulted and killed by Valles. Ramirez would later state while incarcerated that he was fascinated rather than repulsed by the images and stories Mike shared with him. Mike taught his young cousin some of his military skills, including stealth and kill tactics. Yo, he's a fucking gravy seal, dude. What the fuck? I mean, they just be taking anyone into the military back then at that point, right? Like they wanted bodies. They don't give a fuck. Around this time, Ramirez began to seek escape from his father's violent temper by sleeping in a local cemetery. His father would tie him to a crucifix in a cemetery overnight as punishment. Mike and his wife, Josefina, had a son named Miguel Valles Jr., who passed away at the age of 5 in an accidental gas explosion. It is unknown if Ramirez as a child ever interacted with his younger cousin before his death. This seems, yet again, so crazy to not even exist. The fucking poor kid gets blown by a gas explosion. Like, what are the fucking odds that all this is tying together? Or accidental. This could have been our guy back when he was 5. This was his first kill. Shortly after Ramirez had turned 14 in 1974, he began using LSD frequently. That's doing the LSD at 14 and frequently. Your brain. He and Mike resumed bonding over their shared use of drugs and alcohol. That's always fun. It was during this period that Ramirez began to cultivate an interest in Satanism and the occult. When he reached adolescence, Ramirez began to meld his burgeoning sexual fantasies with graphic violence, including forced bondage, murder, mutilation, and R-word. While still in school, he took a job at a local Holiday Inn and used his master key to rob sleeping patrons. On at least one occasion, Ramirez molested 2 children in an elevator at the hotel, but he was never prosecuted for this act. His employment ended abruptly after Ramirez attempted to R-word a woman in her hotel room and was caught in the act by the victim's husband. Although the husband beat Ramirez at the scene, criminal charges were dropped when the couple who lived out of state declined to return to Texas to testify against him. Holy shit, this story is wild. I underestimate how insane real life can be sometimes. Until you hear it, you really, like no one wants to think about this. No one wants to think that people can do this, but like it's fucking insane. This goes on. Ramirez was present on May 4th, 1974, when Mike fatally shot his second wife, 26-year-old Valles, in the face with a handgun during a domestic argument. Like the graphic photos and stories of his cousin's war crimes in Vietnam, Ramirez would give similar remark that witnessing the murder was not traumatic for him in any traditional sense, but rather a subject of fascination. After the shooting, Ramirez became sullen and withdrawn from his family and peers. Mike was later found out not guilty by Jesse's murder by reason of insanity. with the shooting attributed to PTSD disorder from his military service. After his elder cousin's murder of his second wife, Ramirez dropped out of Jefferson High School in the 9th grade, shortly before the school year ended in 1975. Wow. The thing is, the sights of war definitely wouldn't have helped, after he came back. But considering the fact that's what he was doing to women over there, he was already long gone. That dude needed to be put down, dude. Shortly after the shooting, Ramirez moved in with his older sister Ruth and her husband, Roberto, an obsessive peeping Tom who took Ramirez along on his nocturnal exploits. Everyone this guy encounters is a literal fucking cartoon character. This is unfucking believable. It's literally not one single decent role model in this kid's life. After Mike was released from the mental hospital in 1977, he sometimes accompanied Ramirez and Roberto on these voyeuristic walks, spying on women in the nearby areas through their windows. In 1982, at age 22, he moved and settled permanently in California. It was around this time that Ramirez began to use cocaine, which quickly became his substance of choice, and began to commit theft and burglaries to procure money for sustaining his addiction. He lived nomadically between San Francisco and the Los Angeles County during this time prior to his incarceration. Wow, dude, they're getting together, the gang. On April 10th, 1984, Ramirez murdered Mai Lung. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, that's how I'm pronouncing it. A 9-year-old Chinese-American girl in the basement of her apartment building in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. Are you kidding me? Lung was with her 8-year-old brother and looking for a lost $1 bill when Ramirez approached the girl and told her to follow him into the basement to find it. Once they were in the basement, Ramirez beat, strangled, and R-worded Lung before stabbing her to death with a switchblade, hanging her partially nude body from a pipe by her blouse. Dude, that's Art the Clown shit. That's fucking brutal. The killing was not linked to Ramirez until 2009, when his DNA was matched to a sample obtained at the crime scene. In 2016, officials disclosed evidence of a second suspect, identified through another DNA sample retrieved from the scene, who was believed to have been present at Lung's murder. Authorities had not publicly identified the suspect, described as being juvenile at the time, and have not brought charges due to a lack of evidence. Holy shit. On June 28, 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vincow was found murdered in her apartment in Glassell Park, Los Angeles. She had been stabbed repeatedly in the head, neck, and chest while asleep in her bed, and her throat slashed so deeply that when she was nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was found on the mesh screen he removed to gain access through an open window. This, his second known murder, established a pattern of breaking into homes, committing particular vicious murders, and frequently burglarizing his victims, either before or after killing them, which was mainly to support his drug addiction and pay his rent. Imagine just being on the fucking receiving end of that, dude. That's just so fucking crazy. Your luck, you're just in your home. And then that happens. Oh my God. You'll lock your windows, hide your kids, hide your wife, all that. 9 months later, on March 17th, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home in Rosemead, shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. She survived when the bullet ricocheted off the keys, and she held in her hands as she lifted them to protect herself. This story's insane. Hernandez played dead until Ramirez left the scene. Inside the house, her roommate, 34-year-old Dale Yoshi Okazaki, heard the gunshot and ducked behind a counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When she raised her head to get a look at what happened, Ramirez, who was waiting for Okazaki, peeked over the counter, shot her once in the forehead, killing her instantly. Within the hour of the Rosemead attack, Ramirez pulled a 30-year-old Cy Leon Veronica, just say Veronica, out of her car in Monterey Park, shot her twice with a .22 caliber handgun and fled. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. These two murders and an attempted third in a single day attracted extensive coverage from the news media, who dubbed the attacker, described as curly-haired with bulging eyes and wide-spaced, rotting teeth, the walk-in killer, and the Valley Intruder. That's when he officially got that name, those names. We're looking for someone with curly hair, bulging eyes, and nasty-ass teeth. Get a poster made. 1 week later, at approximately 2 a.m. on March 27th, 1985, Ramirez entered a home that he had burglarized a year earlier just outside of Whittier and killed 64-year-old Vincent Charles Zazzara, that's an interesting name, in his sleep with a gunshot to his head. Zazzara's wife, 44-year-old Maxine Zazzaria, was awakened by the gunshot. Ramirez beat her and bound her hands while demanding to know where her valuables were. While he ransacked the room, Maxine escaped her bonds and retrieved a shotgun from under the bed, which she was unaware was not loaded. No! She pulled the trigger just after he turned around and saw her. The infuriated Ramirez shot her 3 times with his handgun, killing her, then fetched a large carving knife from the kitchen. He mutilated her body by cutting an inverted cross into her chest, then removed her eyes and placed them in a jewelry box. He attempted to have intercourse with the body, but found himself so shaken by her attempting to shoot him that he was unable to achieve liftoff. He took the jewelry box containing her eyes and kept it at his apartment as a souvenir until his arrest. Ramirez left footprints from a pair of obvious sneakers in the flower beds, which the police photographed and cast. Bullets found at the scene were matched to those found at previous attacks, and the police determined that a serial killer was at large. On May 14th, 1985, Ramirez returned to Monterey Park and entered the home of the 66-year-old Bill Doy and his disabled wife, 56-year-old Lillian Doy. Surprising Doy in his bedroom, Ramirez shot him in the face with a .22 semi-automatic pistol as Doy went for his own handgun. After beating the mortally wounded man into unconsciousness, Ramirez entered Lillian's bedroom, bound her with thumb cuffs, then R-worded her. After he had ransacked the home for valuables, Bill died of his injuries while in the hospital. Dude, this guy's a fucking demon, a literal demon. It's so unfortunate. Like, both of these last 2 cases, at least people had some type of handgun or something ready. God forbid something like this ever happen. But if it's not ready and you're not ready to go and you don't at least have some type of mechanism to let them know you're coming, this guy's apparently quiet as night. He's a trained fucking soldier from his mental case. Who was he? His cousin? 2 weeks later, on May 29th, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia and stopped at the house of Mabel Bell, age 39, and her disabled sister, 81-year-old Florence Lang. Finding a hammer in the kitchen, he bludgeoned and bound Lang in her bedroom, then bound and bludgeoned Bell before using an electrical cord to shock the women. Dude, we're here. After R-wording Lang, he used Bell's lipstick to draw the satanic pentagram symbol on her thigh, as well as on the walls of both bedrooms. The women were found 2 days later, alive but in a coma state and critically injured. Bell died in the hospital from her injuries on July 15th. Lang died in August. Wow. From the end of May to then just suffering, all because of this fucking mental case. The next day, Ramirez drove the same car to Burbank and snuck into the home of 42-year-old Carol Kyle. At gunpoint, he bound Kyle and her 11-year-old son with handcuffs before ransacking the house. He released Kyle to direct him where the family's valuables were. He then R-worded her repeatedly. Ramirez also repeatedly ordered her not to look at him, telling her at one point that he would cut her eyes out. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and binding the two together again with the handcuffs. Dude, this is awful. This is awful. On the night of July 2nd, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Arcadia and randomly selected the house of 75-year-old Mary Louise Cannon, a widowed grandmother. These people can't catch a break. After quietly entering Cannon's home, he found her asleep in her bedroom. He bludgeoned her into unconsciousness with a lamp, then stabbed her to death using a 10-inch butcher knife from her kitchen. Ramirez repeatedly stabbed Cannon's body after she was already dead. 3 nights later, Ramirez broke into a home in Sierra Madre and bludgeoned 16-year-old Whitney Bennett with a tire iron as she slept in her bedroom. Dude, he's always getting them while they're sleeping. We gotta up our security. We gotta have a fucking dog that'll just start barking or something. After searching in vain for a knife in the kitchen, Ramirez tried to strangle the girl with a telephone cord. He stated that he was startled to see electrical sparks emanate from the cord, and when his victim began to breathe, he fled the house believing that Jesus Christ had intervened to save her. Bennett survived the attack, although 478 stitches were required to close the lacerations to her scalp. Holy fuck. Oh my god, that's fucking awful. That's awful. On the night of June 27th, 1985, 32-year-old Patty Elaine Higgins was murdered in her Arcadia home. The crime was not discovered until July 2nd when she failed to show up for work. Her attacker had sodomized her, strangled her, and slashed her throat. Ramirez was charged with murder and burglary in relation to Higgins' death. However, these charges were eventually dropped due to a lack of concrete physical evidence linking Higgins to the other murders. Based on a statement Ramirez made to an investigator, he is also a suspect in the San Francisco double murder of 58-year-old Christina Caldwell and 70-year-old Mary Caldwell. The sisters were found stabbed to death in their Telegraph Hill apartment on February 20th, 1985. While incarcerated, Ramirez openly bragged to a prison officer and other inmates about having killed more than 20 people. What the fuck, dude? Guys, there is a lot more to this story, so if you want a part 2 to this video, drop a like, leave a comment, let me know other cases I should definitely check out. You guys have been putting a few in the comments that I want to look into. One of them maybe is the Winchester house, someone said.